Thank you for joining us today for another exclusive interview sponsored by Emovet. Help your horses reach their maximum potential with Emovet's line of natural homeopathic products. I'm your host today, Aurelian Drumian. Today, we are joined by Owen Burrows, a highly respected trainer with a growing international presence. With Deira Mile progressing impressively from his juvenile days to his recent performance in Riyadh, we'll explore his path to Dubai World Cup night and the big decision between the Shima Classic and the Gold Cup. We'll also discuss Burrow's successful partnership with prominent owners like Hamad Al Sheikh and Chadwell, as well as his insights on technology in training and his plans for the future. Stay tuned for an engaging conversation with a leading figure in global racing. Well, great to have you here, Owen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. So, Deira Mile has shown significant development since his maiden days. How would you describe his progression from his juvenile season to now, especially considering his most recent run in Riyadh?
So obviously, I didn't actually train him through his 2-year-old years. He had one run for me back in the Group 1 at Doncaster at the back end of the season, um, where he ran very well and finished fourth. So I honestly can't tell you too much about him as a 2-year-old. He obviously has stayed with me all through those years since then. Obviously, last year he's quite a big horse. Look, he developed well from 2 to 3, and I felt it was important to get his head in front sort of early on as a 3-year-old, which we did at Windsor. And then speaking to Ahmed, we didn't want to risk running him in a trial before the Derby. He went to Epsom for their sort of gallops morning and had a gallop round and handled the track very well. So that gave us the confidence to go to Epsom. And he ran a real big race that day, finishing fourth to City of Troy. Plans, we were a little bit far back than what we originally planned. He jumped a little bit slow. But look, that can happen. He made a big effort down the outside there and kept on very bravely for fourth. We then felt as if he would be a sort of St. Ledger type horse. So he was entered at York in the 1.5 mile race there. Name escapes me at the moment, typically. But we took him out. Ground was a bit quick. So he then went to Windsor. And look, he was sort of 95% ready, but it was a messy race. There was only a few runners. And again, in hindsight, we perhaps should have gone and made our own running. But look, it was a very satisfactory, trial as such for the Ledger. And again, he made great strides again, took a nice step forward, probably for his best runner. I think on ratings, he did a bigger performance in the Ledger than he did in the Derby. So we ended the year on a sort of real positive note. Mentally, obviously, all these races, they're good races, and he was maturing with his racing. This year, I felt physically done very well from 3 to 4. He's really strengthened up well. Obviously, doing his work through the winter. Again, as I touched on, he is a better horse on the turf, so his work at home was satisfactory. But he will be better horse when he gets on the turf at home. But when he travelled to Riyadh, he really sort of, what's hard to explain it, but it sort of really woke him up as such. He took all in. He travelled great, took in all the surroundings. He ate well when he was out there. From my point of view, it was a real positive that he was maturing all the time. And my guys who were out there with him early, sort of, they were very happy with him. He was moving well. And look, on the day of the race, he broke again. He has a little tendency to break a bit slow, and in hindsight, probably Jason, perhaps should have just sat quiet on him. But look, it was, we had our plan beforehand, and that was what he was trying to, execute. So hindsight's wonderful, but it did just get him a bit keen, and he probably ran a bit fresh under the floodlights for the first time, and he pulled for sort of probably 8 to 10 furlongs of the race, which in these staying races you can't do that. You can't expect your horse to finish. But the one thing I was very pleased with, that he was still bang there turning in. He had every chance turning in, which I thought was a big performance. So look, he got a bit tired. He had a nice blow afterwards, but again, pleasingly, he took come out of the race fine. He travelled back to us, arrived back last Thursday, a week ago. He seems fine afterwards. We've just been ticking him over quietly, just keeping an eye on him. He's had a few canters. He'll step up his work for Dubai now next week. But I think all that travel, etc., has really brought him forward mentally. It's been a good experience for him.
Perfect. You mentioned quite a few things regarding his physics. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about his mental. You've mentioned previously that he's still a big baby. How has his temperament evolved, and what specific approaches have you taken, to develop his mental maturity?
So look, obviously, as a 2-year-old, before he come to me, he was he was a big horse. So he was a big 2-year-old, but he could just have a wander around in front in his races, and he sort of was beaten at very short odds at Chelmsford one day before he came to me, and people could sort of say he chucked the race away. So I felt, as I say, he was a little bit of a baby, and he needed confidence. He needed confidence. That's why I thought, as a 3-year-old, it was good to go and get his head in front. And then obviously, he was asked some big questions. But as I say, I do think he is mentally maturing. We've put headgear on him in his last few races. Obviously, he had cheek pieces in the Derby, and had blinkers in the Ledger, which obviously he lugged a bit left and bumped his rival, which we were demoted from third to fourth in the Ledger, which was disappointing. But again, he was only beat sort of a length and a half by the winner, so it was still a big performance. I think I'm going to see what his work is like now leading up to Dubai, to see what sort of headgear we put on him. It may well be, as he's now maturing with his races, we may end up middle of the season, we might not need headgear. As I say, I think it's just more, it was a bit of a mental thing with him, really. He enjoys sort of passing horses. So, at home in his work, he has a lead horse which he goes and joins, and then we try and let him, finish a neck up. Just, as I say, it's just giving him confidence. And on race day, I think he enjoys sort of being ridden like that as well. He likes to pass horses; it gives him confidence.
Excellent. And after Riyadh, have you made any changes to his training schedule?
Not really, as I say, it's early days yet. He only arrived back last week. We've just, he obviously had a few quiet days, but we've canted him now this week, and he will start fast work again next Wednesday. And as I say, yeah, we might just look at slightly different bit of headgear. We'll see. He'll show me how much mentally he's come forward. And I don't want him to be as keen as he was obviously in Riyadh. He needs to settle better. It looks as if we're going to go for the Shima Classic in Dubai. Originally, he was sort of ninth reserve, but as it's sort of evolved on now over the last few weeks, he's actually got an invitation there the other day. So speaking to Ahmed, he was keener to have a shot at that than the 2 Mile Gold Cup, and that probably makes sense at this stage, because you'll go in another furlong further than we were in Riyadh, and obviously he was keen. The class of opposition will be a lot higher in the Shima, but the way the race will run will suit us better, and big prize money down to eighth, I think it is. So well, that's the way we're sort of swaying at the moment.
Perfect. And who's traveling with him at the moment? And when?
So his lad who looks after him, Hemant, who was with him in Riyadh, he's a very experienced guy. Hemant, he rides in sort of most of his cantering and sort of easy work at home, but he's a very experienced guy, knows him very well. He's done him since he came to me as a back end as a 2 year old. And he's travelled, he used to work for Charlie Hills years ago, travelled and used to ride a filly which won the Irish Guineas a while back, just the judge. So yeah, I'm every confidence in the man that he knows the horse and knows how he moves and everything. If he's not happy, he will soon let me know.
Perfect. And are you planning to get there as well?
Oh, definitely, yeah, yeah. No, a little sort of sunshine break just before the season gets going properly is
Fair enough.
always gratefully received. So yeah, I'll probably aim to arrive sort of about Wednesday, I would have thought.
Okay, perfect. That's going to be a change of weather, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Definitely.
That's going to be great. You're considering entering Deira Mile in either the Shema Classic or the Gold Cup on Dubai World Cup night. What factors will determine your final decision between those two different races?
Well, as I touched on there before, I think originally he was obviously entered in both, um, and the Shima was very strongly entered. There was I'm not sure how many I've got them here, but there's pages of entries in the Shima, and we were sort of even 114 rated. We were still ninth reserve, so we obviously had the Gold Cup as a backup, but on the back of his run in Riyadh, and as I say, he now gets a spot in the Shima. We had a beginning of the week, we officially had an invitation for the Shima. So speaking with Ahmed, we thought it would be sensible to drop back to a mile and a half with how keen he was in Riyadh. Obviously, opposition will be much stronger in the Shima. But yeah, it probably makes sense. It'll be a harder race, but it will make sense at this stage. I'm not, I have no qualms of going up in distance again through the year, but I think at this stage it probably makes sense to go a mile and a half.
Fair enough. And could you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Mr. Al Sheikh? How did you meet him, and how many horses do you train for him at the moment?
So look, yeah, I've been training now for Ahmed about 3 seasons. He very kindly, when I sort of became a public trainer after training exclusively for Shadwell and Sheikh Hamdan's family, he was the very first person to message me and said he'd like to have a horse with me. So I'll be eternally grateful to him for that because he's been a big supporter of ours now for the last few years. And I'd have sort of about 11, I think, for him at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah, we've got no, tell a lie, 4 3-year-olds, obviously Deira Mile, and yeah, there's about half a dozen 2-year-olds as well. So yeah, look, he's a good guy to deal with. That means he's very hands-on as such. He's brave as well. He likes to have a punt in these big races. Some people may look at it and think, oh, you've got no chance. But, his big thing is he'd love to win the Derby. And, he was second with his horse of Andrew Bordens a few years ago. We were fourth last year. I think he's been fourth once before. So he's knocking on the door. And interestingly, he doesn't spend huge at the sales, but he goes through the catalogue himself, picks pedigrees he likes. He has a sort of system. He likes, stay in mares as such. And yeah, look, he then goes around and looks at them at the sales, and I take my hat off to him. There's a lot of people out there who spend far more money than he does, but doesn't get anywhere near the results that he would. So I think we had 4 winners for him last year. And look, he is a trader as well. He will sell the horses, which I totally understand. It's a business. So if the money's right, then he will trade. But look, that's if he does sell one, then he will replace it. That's what's very good with him. So yeah, I'd like to think we have a good relationship. And he was the first guy to send me horses. When I became a public trainer. So I'll be very grateful for him.
Excellent. And you also train for Shadwell and handle Al Wasl Storm for Hamad Al Sheikh. How do you balance the responsibilities of training for different prominent owners? And does this create any beneficial synergies?
Look, you obviously have to try and keep all your owners happy. That's part of my job. Um, and there will be times when we'll clash. You'll have horses running in the same races, but I think everybody realizes that that's going to happen. And from the numbers that we train, it probably isn't going to happen a huge amount. It's not as if I've got 200. But it will happen. We've had sort of two in the same race for different owners, and more often than not, everybody is happy. Dependent, obviously they're keener if their horse wins, but if the other horse runs well and wins, then they're happy as well. So look, it's yeah. At the moment, touch wood, I haven't had too many problems of keeping everybody happy, and long may that continue.
That sounds very good. Looking beyond Dubai World Cup night, what are your long-term ambitions for Deira Mile this season? And are there specific targets in Europe or internationally that you believe would suit his ability? Would the Epsom Classic, for example, be on the list?
So obviously he's not eligible for the
Okay.
Epsom Classic because he's now 4, so that's for 3-year-olds only. Um, but when after Dubai, we will see how he is. There is sort of certainly races in Europe, in France, which I've mile and a half, mile 5 sort of race. I think it'd be important to make him a group winner. That's be at whatever level early on. Obviously, going further into the year, it'd be great to make him a Group One winner. Um, so, yeah, I think that would be important. Um, whether or not it will be in this country or abroad, time will tell, really. As I say, there's a few races in May time in France, which might just suit. There is a Group One in France early July time, which can sometimes, it's a 4-year-olds and upwards, and quite often isn't a huge field, so that might suit him. He's obviously shown that he can handle plenty of cut in the ground. So I'd have no qualms with sending him to France if it was very soft. Um, but yeah, I'd love to make him a group winner, but obviously, the ultimate aim would be a Group One somewhere.
For sure, I can imagine. Talking about Al Wasl Storm, how is he shaping up? And do you think the Middle East races could be a target for him too?
So look, it's very early days for him at the moment. He's an unraced 3-year-old who sort of did bits of work last year and then just had a little setback which stopped him from getting on the track. But he's in strong work now. He'd be ready sort of early April time, in a month's time. Probably it'd be a horse to start at a mile and a quarter. Um, he's sort of Middle East wise, I wouldn't be venturing that far ahead. He needs to show to me at the moment that hopefully he'd be good enough to look at targets like that. But we've got what have I got? I think I've got 3 unraced 3-year-olds for Ahmed. He's one of them. There's another one, El Mumayez, actually Talalai, and then there's 2, Deira Storm and El Shababi, which actually ran last year. So Deira Storm is a quite exciting horse. He's a blue colt. We've had one run at the back end last season. It was a very eye-catching second. So he's just started his half-speed work. He'll be ready sort of early part of April. Might just be more middle part. But he's out of a Galileo mare, interestingly. But he's all speed. He takes after his sire, Blue Point. So I don't see him getting much further than a mile. But yeah, the 2 unraced ones, Al Wazl Storm and El Momayez, he's a big Persian King horse. He'd be the biggest horse I've got in the yard, actually. So yeah, he's just started half speed work. He'd be ready middle of April time. They need to prove to me that they'd be good enough to start looking at races abroad at the moment. We'll concentrate at home for them at the moment.
Sure, that does make sense. Having campaigned Al Flaila in Bahrain and Qatar, How did he handle different track conditions and specifically the travel? And what are your plans for him over the summer? Any other Shadwell horses to look out for over the summer?
So, well, El Flayla plans are on hold for him at the moment. He may be sold to go and stand as he may go and stand as a stallion abroad somewhere. It's a little bit up in yeah. I don't know the full ins and outs yet. So yeah, I haven't got any plans for him going forward. But he's been an absolute pleasure to train because he's been to Bahrain, he went to Qatar. He's another one. He takes all the travel very very good. Um, so yeah, but and looking then onto the Shadwell horses, Anne Matt was the British Champion Stakes winner last year. Back in October, he's now 7, but he hasn't got many miles on the clock. So we'll be looking at some big targets for him this year. He will, he will start sort of probably end of April time, sometime in May. Not quite sure where yet. He will tell us, but he'll have the Prince of Wales at Royal Ascot, the Eclipse. So, he's a very exciting horse. Shadwell also have a new Bay filly, 3-year-old, who had one run as a 2-year-old called Falakea. She won very impressively, and she just started half speed work. She could be an Oaks filly. She's got that sort of pedigree. She's out of a Warfront mare by New Bay, so yeah, she's exciting. She was very impressive when she won. So yeah, they'd be the two main Shadwell ones. Obviously, I'm very fortunate. I train for Sheikh Ahmed as well, and we have a 4-year-old Zoustar colt called Jarraf, who won twice last year, was second in a Group 3 on his final start. He progressed out of handicaps. He's now rated 106, so I think handicaps will probably be gone for him. But again, physically, he's done great from 3 to 4. I'll probably start him in a listed race in May, all being well. But he'll have some group entries. I think he's a 7 furlong horse. So the recently upgraded York Stakes it's the Ebor meeting, not till August, but there's a 7 furlong Group 1 there now that could suit him. But again, he's got to prove he's good enough for that. But he's certainly an exciting horse.
Perfect. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about AI and technology itself. We've heard from several trainers over the past year about, technology and AI being used to measure and enhance performance, and also for troubleshooting. Is that something you also have incorporated into your yard? And what's the most exciting development for you when it comes to the use of technology in training and racing?
So look, it's not something I've got in at the moment. Last year at the Breeze Up Sales, I was involved with a company which was sort of doing all the metrics on stride length and everything of the breezes. And then they had their sort of algorithms, etc., which they put into their sort of computer, and it brought out, their top rated 2-year-olds from the Breeze, and that was interesting because it wasn't necessarily the fastest breezes which come out on top.
Sure.
So look, Breeze Up season's coming shortly, so that would be something I would look to use again. Interestingly, for Riyadh, you had to use the I think it's called the sleep app. It's an app where you take a recording of the horse and trotting up, and it's something you then have a database, and they measure the trot and see if any and over the time they can pick up things that possibly the naked eye isn't going to pick up.
Wow.
So that's something I'm going to look into, possibly using a bit more. Obviously, we're very hands-on with our vets anyway, so we have monthly trot ups. So everything in the yard is trotted up once a month, just to keep an eye on its movement. So yeah, it's certainly, as I say, it's not something I've got in practice at the moment. but it's certainly, it's there as an aid. And if it can help and give you an edge, then, we'd certainly not be afraid to use it.
Perfect. Finally, on to the last question, pretty straightforward. What sales are you planning to attend this summer? Do you tend to prefer yearly sales or, as you mentioned, breeze ups?
I probably wouldn't have a preference, to be honest. Obviously, the breeze up does give you the advantage of seeing a horse in action, um, and that has its sort of pros and cons as such. It's certainly, probably years ago, a breeze up horse was you know thought to be just a little 5 furlong sprinter who would be ready early as a 2-year-old, but then, by the end of its 2-year-old, then there wouldn't be much left. But that's not such the case now. There's all sorts of horses sold at the breeze up sales now, where horses which need a bit of time. The consigners have got so good now; they do such a great job with them. So yeah, we'll be looking to go to sort of Doncaster breeze up sale. We'll be at the Craven breeze up, possibly the Guineas breeze up. There is France. I've got sort of just 1 or 2 orders at the moment, so it all just depends on when I fill them. If I fill them early, then there would probably be no real reason to head to France. So look, we'll see. As I say, I wouldn't have a preference. Obviously, the yearling sales are great. You get to see these animals and obviously the ones with the pedigrees, and if they're correct and walk well, etc., then they're going to fetch big money. So it's trying to find the little hidden gems as such. And obviously with the breeze up sales, we can all look at a breeze up and we all get the list of the fastest. So depending on what your angle is, what sort of horse you want, you're going to try and find, going to try and buy the quickest horses from the breeze. But as I say, it's not necessarily always the best ones are like that. They may be very quick over 2 furlongs, but there is no 2 furlong races. So the 5 furlong races that are our minimum, so they have to go that far. And looking on, and obviously we all, we don't just want something which is going to run and do well for 2 or 3 runs as a 2-year-old. We all want them to move forward and go on as 3, and so yeah, it's I quite enjoy season time. It's it's hard work because where I'm based, it's Newmarket is just over 2 hours away. Doncaster would be 3 hours away. So it's you're out the yard a fair bit at sales season, but look, it's part of our job, and it's all you as a trainer. You want to train horses which you like, so we want to go to the sales and try and buy ones which we are keen on.
Perfect. I think it's very important to touch base with the horse itself or themselves, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Owen.
Perfect.